A few weeks ago, India's Prime Minister stood at a podium and issued this really stark caution about consumption. And of course, the headlines immediately pointed to the West Asia oil crisis and rising inflation. The war is undeniably causing huge ripple effects, right? It's reaching directly into India's kitchen economy with surging vegetable oil prices. But while everyone is laser-focused on these geopolitical tensions and the immediate pinch on their wallets, there is an entirely different kind of crisis brewing in the background. In this explainer, we're going to look past that obvious misdirection to uncover a threat that has the potential to literally shake the foundations of the world's fifth largest economy.
So how exactly can warm water 12,000 kilometers away crash an entire economy? It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But right now, out in the Pacific Ocean, a massive patch of warm water is expanding. It's slated to really take form in May of 2026, and scientists are watching this anomaly with absolute dread. This isn't just your standard run-of-the-mill weather fluctuation. It's brewing into the rarest and honestly the most dangerous climate event known to modern meteorology. And unfortunately for us, India is sitting directly in its crosshairs.
Okay, let's dive into this dark track record, because history paints a seriously grim picture. In the last 75 years, only 5 of these massive events have hit our planet, and every single one has fractured the Indian economy. Back in 1876, an event of this scale triggered crop failures so severe that 5 to 10 million Indians lost their lives. To put that into perspective, that effectively wiped out 3 to 4% of the entire global human population at the time. Fast forward to 1972, and the economy didn't just slow down, actually, scratch that, it completely shrank, crashing to negative 0.6%. In 2002, GDP growth plunged from 6% to 4%. And then in 2015, we saw food inflation spike to 7%, leading to just unspeakable tragedy in farming communities.
Now, to really understand why India is uniquely vulnerable to this, we've got to look at the numbers. Modern India is an absolute powerhouse. It's the 5th largest economy in the world, boasting over $130 billion tech unicorns. Yet, while agriculture might only account for 17% of India's GDP on paper, it employs a staggering 43% of the entire workforce. Think about that. Despite all the tech booms and the high-rises, the country still operates fundamentally as an agricultural economy.
And what's truly alarming about this setup is just how precarious that agricultural foundation actually is. You'd probably assume a top-tier global economy has fully modernized its farming infrastructure, right? Well, nationwide, 44% of farmlands have absolutely no canals, no tube wells, and 0 irrigation schemes. Look specifically at a massive state like Maharashtra. Only 18% of its farmland is irrigated, the remaining 82% completely dependent on the rain. This means millions of farmers plow their land in April, buy their seeds on credit in May, and by June, they are entirely at the mercy of the skies.
And this vulnerability, it isn't just contained to the farms. It dictates the entire national economy. The Asian Development Bank has quantified this perfectly. Just a 1% increase in rainfall equals a 0.16% boost to the total GDP. When the rains are good, harvests are bountiful, farmers earn money, and then they spend that money on tractors, scooters, clothes, soap, the whole shebang. In fact, rural India accounts for 37% of all fast-moving consumer goods spending. That rural demand is exactly what keeps the city factories humming, but if the rain fails, the crops fail. Incomes vanish, spending literally stops, and those factories grind to a halt.
To understand how this crucial rain actually arrives, let's deconstruct the complex meteorology into something a bit more relatable. Imagine you're in a small, crowded room during the absolute peak of an Indian summer. The power cuts out, the AC dies, and within minutes the air is thick, hot, and unbearable. The massive Indian landmass is that hot room, creating a giant low-pressure vacuum. Meanwhile, the Indian Ocean, hanging around a much cooler 28 to 30 degrees, is the cool outside. It creates a high-pressure zone.
So when you open the window in that hot room, the hot, light air rises and escapes through the top. This leaves behind an empty vacuum. And since wind on Earth always flows from high pressure to low pressure, the heavy, dense, cool air from the outside, our high-pressure Indian Ocean, rushes into the room through the bottom. As this ocean air rushes toward the burning landmass of India, it carries massive amounts of water, dumping it over the continent for 4 straight months. And honestly, that is the beautiful magic of the monsoon.
But let's zoom out a bit and see how this builds into an even more powerful engine. What most people don't know is that India's monsoon actually relies on a second open window, located 12,000 kilometers away. Normally, these really powerful trade winds blow right across the Pacific Ocean from South America toward Asia. These winds push warm surface water westward, sort of piling it all up right near Indonesia. This warm pool acts like a second hot room, sending hot air up and creating a secondary, massive low-pressure vacuum that pulls even more moist wind from the Indian Ocean straight toward India.
But what happens when that engine breaks down? This brings us to El Niño. Every few years, those crucial Pacific trade winds weaken, or they completely reverse. When this happens, that massive warm pool of water sitting next to Indonesia stops moving west. It literally slides all the way back east, back towards South America. This shifting of the warm pool completely flips the atmospheric pressure systems across the globe, dismantling the delicate, intricate machinery that brings rain to India.
So the absolutely crucial point here is the sheer scale of what is forming for 2026. The intensity of an El Niño is measured by how much hotter that Pacific water gets. A 0.5 degrees Celsius jump? That's a standard El Niño. When it crosses 2.0 degrees, it officially becomes a super El Niño. The forecasts for 2026 are pointing to an unprecedented 2.5 degrees Celsius anomaly. If this holds, we are not just looking at a bad season, we are staring down the barrel of potentially the strongest El Niño ever recorded in human history.
This 2.5-degree monster hits the Indian monsoon with a synchronized triple attack. Step 1. The global heat causes the Indian Ocean to cook itself, losing its cool high-pressure status. This means the wind has absolutely no reason to rush toward land. Step 2. That second window by Indonesia completely inverts. Instead of a vacuum pulling moisture into India, it turns into a high-pressure wall pushing moisture away. And finally, Step 3. The trade winds effectively die, starving the subcontinent of the residual moisture it desperately needs.
The result of this triple attack is just devastating on the ground. The little moisture that does manage to overcome these flipped atmospheric systems arrives incredibly late, it is structurally weak, and the rainfall is painfully patchy. This hits exactly in August and September, the precise window when 600 million agricultural workers and their thirsty crops need the water the absolute most. Late rain simply cannot save a crop that has already died, and patchy rain, it's definitely not going to refill a dry well.
So how does a country actually survive this? Well, the solutions have to be structural, not just reactionary. First up, there absolutely must be a massive transition to drip and sprinkler irrigation, utilizing modern solar-powered micro-irrigation systems so farmers aren't just staring at the sky hoping for a miracle. Secondly, on a macro level, India must follow a model similar to South Korea, actively graduating a large chunk of its population away from pure agriculture and into the manufacturing and IT sectors. A modern economy simply cannot let a random ocean current 12,000 kilometers away decide the fate of 600 million citizens.
Now, to be fair, India is preparing for the immediate aftermath of this incoming weather shock. As we approach this crisis, the Food Corporation of India is sitting on a massive stockpile of 604 lakh tons of wheat and rice. That is nearly 3 times the mandatory buffer requirement of 210 lakh tons. This massive stockpile is the single biggest difference between the catastrophic famine of 1876 and the reality of 2026, ensuring that the country has emergency reserves ready to deploy the second things go south.
But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really critical question to ponder. A grain buffer is a fantastic band-aid, for sure, but is it truly enough? When over 40% of the nation's farmlands are still entirely unirrigated, the root cause of this massive economic vulnerability remains completely unaddressed. We're preparing to survive the disaster, but we aren't yet preventing the damage it inflicts on millions of lives. The 2026 Super El Niño is coming, and how we adapt our infrastructure before it hits will define the economic future of the subcontinent. Thanks for learning with us today, and stay curious.